Good evening. I am the narrator, and welcome to my parlor. Tonight I have a guest by the fireplace. His name is A.P. Strange. He is a writer, a Discordian trickster, and a flying saucer enthusiast, and the host of the A.P. Strange Show. A.P., it has been a while.
It has been a while. How are you doing?
Uh, Good, and yourself?
Doing okay, all things considered.
Yeah, it's my mother's 73rd birthday. So
Oh wow.
we just returned from her birthday dinner. That is irrelevant, but I thought I'd mention it.
Okay. Well, happy
So,
birthday to her.
thank you. I'm sure she would appreciate it. So, what has been going on in your Fortean existence as of late?
As of late, for the past year, as you mentioned in that little intro, I've been hosting my own podcast, and I'm one of the proud thousands of people that has a podcast now. So,
And tell me about your podcast.
um, well, I focus on all of the weird things that I like, and I just invite people on every week. It's a weekly show.
Mhm.
Had some pretty great guests. We talk about everything from 14 subjects to art to culture to weird movies. I have a long running study on third movies in a franchise that I
Mhm.
call third times the charm, where I invite people on and we discuss the third movie in a series of movies. Um, but yeah, we've covered UFOs, all manner of magic and occult practice, ghosts, parapsychology,
Mhm.
14 subject matter. So really runs the gamut.
And what would you say has been your most memorable episode, your most memorable guest?
Oh, well, I don't know that it's, I don't know that I could pick one, but it's only been a year. So it's like, I don't feel like it's time for retrospectives just yet, but there were a
Okay.
few that I was really excited to have on. Um, I had Lloyd Auerbach on the show last
Uh,
year.
I believe I've heard of him. I believe I've read an article or two by him. I don't remember anything about him though.
Yeah, he's a longtime parapsychologist and somebody that for a young AP was somebody that I looked up to. Like he used to appear on shows like Sightings and Unsolved
Mhm.
Mysteries and things like that, um, and TV specials and stuff when I was a
Mhm.
kid. So
So he goes back
um,
to the late 80s if we're talking unsolved mysteries.
yeah. I mean, he got his start in parapsychology really when the first Ghostbusters movie came out around
Okay.
that time. So it was kind of around the same time. He always talks about that being kind of a synchronistic thing in his life journey, where
Yeah.
that movie came out and it kind of boosted the popularity of the subject just as he was really getting into it.
I have to
So
remember you're several years older than me, so you remember the halcyon days of the 90s better than I.
sure, probably, yeah. um, I mean, that's where I kind of I guess that was my coming of age was the '90s. That I remember watching the first season of the X Files when it came out and stuff like that. So
Yeah. Mine was split between the 90s and the 2000s. There's some overlap between us, but there's also some distance.
yeah, it's really weird how much a couple of years difference can make because I have a lot of friends that are only like 5 years older than me, and we have just slightly different frames of reference for some of these things.
Yes.
So like I'm not quite like I would have been too young for like Twin Peaks when it first aired. Although I know people that are my age that were right there for it. Um, but I mean, I don't know if my parents would have let me watch it or if it was on at a
Hmm.
time where I would have watched it when it came out, but I would have been like 10.
Yes.
Um, X Files was more like a couple of years later where I
Hmm.
was kind of in that preteen to teenage zone where I was finding my own TV shows to watch at night and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, I mean, I remember Sightings when I was younger, and when I was a little kid, I watched Unsolved Mysteries all the time, and sometimes old reruns of In Search of if that was on. So
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you remember the UFO Diaries? That I don't know that it ever aired on television, but it was a I believe it was straight to video. It was a series of VHS mini documentaries on UFOs, abductions, etc., made in the early to mid 90s.
was it hosted by Jonathan Frakes?
May have been. I remember buying one back in the day when our local Hollywood video franchise was selling off their VHS tapes.
Yeah.
And then years later, I bought the rest of the series, I believe, through eBay. And then
Okay.
I bought each tape individually, and then I found you could buy them all as a box set, and I felt like a moron. But yeah, it actually it's very much for the layman, very much for the person who may just be browsing the aisles or flipping through channels at night and doesn't necessarily have any interest in UFOs. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I probably have it because at one point I went to an estate sale,
Hmm.
um, just on a whim. Like I think my wife and I found out about it just kind of on Facebook. Somebody had posted on a Facebook page about it. We drove over, and I didn't. I'm always looking for books. I go into these
Yes.
homes hoping to find old weird books, and there was like nothing. And it was like this woman was clearing out her parents' house. I
Hmm.
guess they're like, um, whatever parent she had left had just passed away. And she's like, no, there's no books, but there's all these DVDs over here. And I was like, all right, I'll take a look. This guy just had shelves and shelves of like UFO DVDs, all kinds of documentaries and things like
Yeah.
this. And any and all UFO documentaries. And looking through it, I'm like, there was even one on the Loch Ness monster and a couple
Hmm.
other random subjects, but mostly UFOs. And she just basically gave them to me for free. She's like, I don't know what to do with these, so like, just take them. If you can, shove whatever you can in this box and just take it. Um,
No,
but
not
I'm,
to
I'm
not
sure it was in there. I'm sure that whatever you're talking about was in there.
not to interrupt, but I love how when you said "all right" just now, even though you're from Massachusetts, you pronounced it in the Great Lakes, the Wisconsin, Chicago way of dropping the L's and then merging the A and the R into one word. All right.
Yeah.
It's like
Well,
I'm influencing you remotely through osmosis. But yeah,
uh,
yeah, UFO Diaries is good. If my old VCR still worked, I would be watching them more often. Yeah, there's something about the grimy, low budget aesthetic, something about the creepy art that was drawn either by abductees themselves or psychiatrists or
mhm.
psychologists, therapists, what have you, while they were listening. And the creepy background synthesizer music, it really takes on an atmosphere.
Yeah. Yeah. The '90s was a special time for that stuff.
Yes.
And I had to imagine that this man who had this collection, I'm like, I had this idea in my head. He must have been an experiencer. Like I started building this idea that like, wow, maybe
Mhm.
he was like an abductee and he just like compulsively bought all this stuff because he was looking for answers or something. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
There's there was one series made in Finland in the early 90s. Again, it may have aired on TV over there, but here it was just straight to video that I bought. I bought again on VHS tape from the Half Price Books location in my town. And that one too has a similar grotty aesthetic and a similar, subsequently very effective atmosphere. Although it's hard to follow because the dialogue the narration is all in Finnish with English subtitles.
yeah, I could see
And
that being
the
difficult. Yeah.
subtitles cut in and out and they're not evenly matched to begin with. But if you just watch it late at night in dim light, either on low energy or low energy plus a little weed. Just let the images wash over you. It's entertaining.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I mean, it's got a nice kind of effect to it. Just kind of
Yeah.
a interesting stuff. I feel like Sightings always felt that way. Sightings was a great show for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, it was a real mix and match of the types of subjects they covered, and I think that was my favorite of the shows back then. But of course, there was also Alien Autopsy. I watched that
Yes.
the night it aired. You know.
My father used to watch those back in the 90s. There were those made for TV, made for network TV documentaries that aired on weeknights.
Hmm.
I remember us watching one where they went over the alien autopsy, where they showed the bogus clip, and they showed an interview with one of the guys from the clip where he's explaining how they did this, how they did that, how they made it look authentic, and you can clearly recognize him in the footage. I don't remember when that was. I think maybe 96 or 97. I don't remember which network, though. I'm thinking either ABC or NBC.
Yeah,
Oh,
maybe. I mean, I think the original was Fox, but
yeah.
maybe not. Um, but I had that one on VHS as well. But I no longer have a VHS player, so kind of got rid of my VHSs at one point.
Yeah. I still have a VHS DVD combo player
Oh wow,
from like 99, 2000. It works.
yeah, yeah. The trouble is VHS tapes degrade. So
Yes.
yeah,
And until recently being, I don't know, the last several years ago, there was technology to convert VHS to DVD. But that technology was invented when DVD was still, the premier media format. But now that physical media altogether, including DVD, is going the way of the dodo, even that's become irrelevant.
yeah. But I
It's
mean, you have to wonder
hard to
about that though,
find.
because um, these things can go back and forth, and I think as people are steadily becoming fed up with streaming,
Hmm.
um, there is a push back toward hard media, you know, and
Yes.
it's there's a lot of people aren't producing it anymore, and you're not guaranteed that a TV show is going to end up on DVD.
Oh,
But but yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea to have hard copies of things that
yes.
that because you can't count on streaming services to supply everything, you know.
No, no, and the sheer naivety of like early streaming adopters was astounding.
Yeah,
Oh, I have Netflix now, you know, so I no longer need my DVD player. I no longer need these DVDs. They just take up space in my home.
right,
Besides,
right,
everything I like, everything I want is already on Netflix or Hulu.
yeah,
So then, a month later, hey, where's my favorite show?
right,
It was there one minute, now it's gone. Well, Netflix never owned that show. They were just borrowing they just had the copyright.
right.
Just had the
Yeah,
rights temporarily, and those contracts expire. What did you expect?
yeah, exactly. And I think people are becoming increasingly fed up with ads invading these streaming platforms unless you pay a bunch of
Yeah.
money, and then limited subscription models, and the fact that you need like several streaming services, and that all adds up and ends up
Hmm.
costing more than a cable subscription would.
Yes.
So, but I mean that whole short-sighted thing that you're talking about, it was part of the reason I collect books.
Yes.
um, because I mean, as a kid, I had a vision of a future where printed media would become obsolete.
Hmm.
Um, and by vision, I don't mean to be like dramatic and say that I had like a religious vision or like a premonition, but as a way of looking toward the future, I'm like, what does a paperless future look like?
Yes.
And the idea of electronic media being the only media that exists terrified me because I'm like, anybody could just go in and edit at any time. And we do see this, like where
Hmm.
Wikipedia, it's the difference between Wikipedia and the encyclopedia. It used to be that you'd have to go
Yeah.
to the Encyclopedia Britannica or an encyclopedia and look up an entry. And nowadays you can look at Wikipedia and 2 days later look at Wikipedia and somebody's edited it, you know? Um, so I mean that whole idea terrified me when I was young, and reading Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 really sealed the deal. So I
Yes.
started hoarding books at like a young age. Like I need to preserve it, you know. Um, maybe to an unhealthy extent. I
Well,
have more
yeah,
books than I have
and
room for, but
your comment about anyone being able to edit digital texts,
yeah,
online texts, I never thought of that, but now that I have, the thought creeps me out. It's like, can you imagine reading a digital copy of Edgar Allan Poe's, The Raven,
yeah,
and you read and the narrator instead is reading stacks upon stacks of dog-eared porn or something.
right, right, right.
It's like, some prankster got a hold of, hacked the streaming service or whatever, that or it wouldn't be a streaming service if it was literature, but hacked the online service you're reading it on.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
yeah, and then the other thing that
God only
bothered
knows
me,
what they would do to Pride and Prejudice, but yeah, go on.
right. Well, the other thing that bothered me about it is that you could disappear media. And
Yes.
you kind of see this in a way too, where it's almost like a book never existed.
Yeah.
If you get to a point where there isn't any physical media out there, you could just disappear one from
Hmm.
existence and gaslight people into thinking the book never existed in the first place.
Hmm.
You
And
know?
that is related to the issue with digital purchases. When you buy a digital copy of a work, of a film or a book on, say, Amazon, you're not actually buying that. You're renting it. Maybe renting isn't the right term. You're paying for a license to access it. But the
Right,
license holders, the copyright holders can yank that at any time.
right.
You know,
Yeah, it
it's
makes you wonder what ownership even really means when there's no material product involved.
no, and yeah, this downfall of physical media, it's like people are forgetting what made VHS and beta so revolutionary in the first place in the early 80s was because prior to home media formats, when a film left the theaters, that was it for it. You would never see it again unless it was aired on television.
Yeah, and I
Which
mean,
it
you
would
used to
be from
have
time to time.
yeah, and you
But
used to have independent theaters too if you were
yeah,
fortunate enough to live
but
in an area that had one, and they do
yeah,
revivals and things like that. But
you were at the mercy of network executives, programmers, etc. But actually being able to own your own copy of the movie and watch it whenever you want, that was liberating for the consumer.
yeah, and
And
terrifying for the people, the copyright holders and the
yeah,
studios because they no longer had control over that.
but decades later, people have grown to take that for granted.
Yeah,
If they were around for it at all, I wasn't. I only know of it because I'm a tech junkie and my parents were, and they told me. But yeah, with the decline of physical media, it's like we are reverting to the way things were prior to physical media, where we're at the mercy of copyright holders and their whims and their schedules. So
yeah,
yeah, people need to keep that in mind.
yeah. If nothing else, we can make people positively paranoid.
Yes.
Paranoia has never steered me wrong. Well, it has, but I
No,
mean,
no, it
generally.
was it was
But
paranoia about my blood pressure and the risk of a heart attack that caused
yeah,
me to lose nearly 100 pounds years ago,
Yeah.
it got
Well,
me
I
into
mean, yeah, that's a good thing.
exercising. So,
Yeah. Um, but to your point, I think that's another interesting thing to look at that I don't know that people necessarily do is when you're thinking about pop culture and its influence on public consciousness and our conceptions of things, our perceptions of things, which is tangential to studying weird stuff, right? The
yes.
stuff that people report. I always think it's important to look at the pop culture that goes along with it. Um, but
Yes.
yeah, to your point, it comes in waves because it's really interesting to think about how, for instance, all the Universal monster movies were really big in the 30s,
Hmm.
and on into the 50s, and then kind of petered out because people weren't really seeing them anymore.
Hmm.
They weren't being shown anywhere until like TV stations started broadcasting them on TV
Yes.
late at night, and then you have like Monster Kids. You have all these youngsters that were like young in the 60s, like little kids in the 60s that are now just discovering like Frankenstein and like Dracula. So it kind of gives it a second life there. And sometimes we think of these things as, having a start point and there's like an arc to them where they steadily go up. But um, that's usually not the case. There's a lot of media drops off the radar, the cultural radar, almost completely for a little while, and then gets revived just because
Yeah.
of a technological advance or like a commercial uh, enterprise like that. So all very interesting and how that affects generational psychical touch points, I guess.
Yeah. And listen, I don't put much stock in the concept of generations. I think they're arbitrary. I think the bookend years for each are arbitrary. I think there are logical errors with them.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, no, I'm with you.
for
I just mean
instance,
generation very loosely, like
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
it's like the baby boomers are defined as beginning in 1946 and ending in 1964. Generation X is defined as beginning in 1965 and ending in 1981 or so. So, someone born in 1964 and someone born in 1965 are two different generations, but someone born in 1964 and someone born in 1946 are the same generation, even though the 1946er is old enough to be the 1964's parent, biologically at least.
right,
So, I've always had issues with generations as a concept. I think they're more a creation of journalists and sociologists. But I do believe in age groups and age cohorts.
right,
And for me, those are very brief and very fleeting. For me, that would be people born in the mid to late 80s who were kids in the 90s, teens in the 2000s, and then young adults in the 2010s.
yeah,
But it would just be, again, people born between like 85 and 90, and even 91 would be pushing it. You
yeah.
know,
Well, what I was referring to is more the generational set of the media, I guess, where we think of
well,
it in decades. We think of
yes,
movies made in the 30s. Probably we're thinking about the audiences in the 30s and how these
yes.
movies got remembered.
But
But you don't necessarily think how those same movies were affecting people in the 60s,
no,
right?
no, you
Like,
don't. I have to clarify. My spiel on generations there was a prelude
oh,
to
okay.
to a broader point. Is I think my age cohort and yours, although technically we're both classified as millennials, is unique in that we were the first. I must use the lingo. We were the first generation to grow up with everything being contemporary, if that makes sense. Just thanks to mass media, thanks to home media, thanks to later on streaming services. What I mean by that is early on in our lives, we were able to access just about any film, any TV show, any song or album from any decade, be it on YouTube, on Netflix, at Best Buy or Media Play or Circuit City or wherever, we could listen to Michael Jackson's Thriller while at the same time watching the original Godzilla. And then we could put on, reruns of Leave It to Beaver and then maybe listen to the Spin Doctor's Two Princes. And because these things have all been preserved and made available through these networks, they're no longer, nothing is really bound to its year or decade or era of origin. And
Well,
so
right.
when it comes to culture influencing people growing up in that context, growing up with those options, then you have a completely, totally open-ended crapshoot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. Um, I have thought about that in terms of things that William S. Burroughs would do with the cut up method.
Yes.
And the way for listeners that might not know, I guess at one point he would curse a cafe by taking recordings of people while they were there and then replaying them on a different day. um it was supposed to kind of screw up the time space uh of that era,
Hmm.
of that area. It was supposed to really
Yeah.
mess with it. um but I mean, we're effectively doing that all the time now because we can
Yes.
call up any of the things that you just mentioned on a device that we keep in our pocket.
Yeah.
You know, so so it's wild times, and I think that might have an effect on the greater reality.
William S. Burroughs is interesting. I'm surprised more Forteans haven't looked into him. Is he's more relevant to the field than you would think? Um,
Yeah, and influential.
yeah, his like he's well known in esoteric circles for his membership in the Illumina. What was it? The Illuminates of Thanateros.
I guess so. I mean,
Yeah,
I didn't know specifically that he was part of that, but
yeah.
makes sense to me.
His
Yeah.
occult
Yep.
practices.
Yeah.
And his name does come up in Fortean literature from time to time for his dalliance in the 90s with the Streebers.
Yeah.
He had read Communion and taken interest and contacted them. But what's interesting was his Naked Lunch, he claimed was a channeled work.
Yeah.
He claimed he was receiving transmissions from outer space from an extraterrestrial source. And he claimed that is true of writings in general, of create all creative works in general, which, dovetails a great deal with things that are being discussed now, like downloads.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I kind of bristle at using modern tech terms to describe something that's
I
always
know.
existed.
I
It
know.
bugs me every time.
Yeah, it's like in Dungeons and Dragons when under the dragon stats, their fire breath is referred to as breath weapon. That sounds so modern and technical.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it should just call it fire breath,
Yeah.
something
Right.
like that. And don't call the fighter class fighter. That's again, that's too sterile. You know,
Yeah.
More specific, soldier, knight, something. I digress. But yeah, Burroughs is relevant in that regard. Um, and the Beat generation in general is. Allen Ginsberg was heavily influenced by William Blake,
Yeah.
and he claimed to have seen an apparition of William Blake, that an apparition of William Blake appeared to him in his room at one
Yeah.
point when he was very young, just like Blake himself claimed to have experienced an apparitions of, I believe it was Swedenborg,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you see this chain, you see this I won't say a chain of causation because I don't know what, if anything, these experiences caused for them or their careers, but you see this chain link.
Yeah, and I mean, I think causation um in some way becomes irrelevant when you start looking at things this way. Um
Reality takes on a literary quality where things are linked more conceptually or thematically than causally.
yes. Yes, I would
Yeah,
agree with that. Yeah.
reality takes on a strangely literary logic.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes the only way to convey it is through like a James Joycean way of leapfrogging conventional linear literature, you know?
Yeah, well, the zeitgeist is a useful concept for that.
Right. Yeah.
I first noticed that when I was studying the phantom clown phenomena in the early 1980s. I noticed that at the time, that was just a general theme in news, in current events, was missing and at-risk children. This was the disappearance of Johnny Gosh, the
Mhm.
disappearance of Eaton Pats.
When missing kids would be on milk cartons and
Yeah, this was
things.
the
Yeah.
introduction of missing kids on milk cartons. The Atlanta child murders,
Yep.
which I believe Wayne Williams is actually innocent, but that's for a later discussion. And then the Phantom Clowns in Boston.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, you see, it was like a motif in the culture at a time,
Yeah.
but
Even
it's
though the clowns, didn't really ever seem successful in abducting a kid, it
no,
was suggested, and that was the whole complaint is that that's what they were trying to do, So, um, yeah.
yeah. So you again, but why was all that going on at the same time? You know what I mean? Or because all those things I just mentioned were in and of themselves causally unrelated. They were contemporaneous or rarious. I don't know how to pronounce it. They were simultaneous, but they weren't really linked in a conventional way or in any apparent way. Again, it's almost like there are zeitgeists, and yet what creates those zeitgeists? Is there some kind of intelligence or some kind of programming going on within the unseen? What's
Yeah,
your
you could
take?
argue that for sure. Yeah. I was just reading recently an old article written by Eugenia Macer's Story,
Mhm.
where she makes the argument of discarnate entities that inhabit people for short periods of time to subtly influence them towards one end or another. Um,
Walk-ins?
it was sort of like that, but I don't know if you've ever read any Eugenia Macer story.
I don't
she,
believe so.
what she's well worth it. Um, but she is very high level conceptual with things, so she leaves it very broad a lot of the time. It allows you to interpret your own kind of. So yeah, you could consider it like a walk-in, or she also uses examples of synchronicity where it almost seems like a discarnate entity caused something to happen just to be
Yes.
synchronous for you to push you in one direction or another. But I think the implication is too that if you do that with a high profile enough person, then that could cause a domino effect, right?
Yes.
And he doesn't even really need to be, right? So I've often thought that sometimes when we have humanoids appearing, I think it's almost like, well, I mean, the term would be a glitch in the matrix, I guess,
Mhm.
um, but sometimes you have weird humanoid sightings or UFOs or inexplicable events just because there's a momentary disruption where entropy needs to happen in order to set the balance right to get things moving in the right direction towards some goal.
Could you provide a specific example?
Well, one that I've used before, and I've hesitated to really advance it with this, but it's a ready example because it's something that people know about is the connection between Mothman and the Silver Bridge. Because people don't, there are people that like to distance themselves, distance those two things,
Of course.
and but I mean they are connected because some of the witnesses had basically premonitions of that event, right?
Hmm.
Um, whether that means there's something temporal going on, like a temporal rift associated with the Mothman, or if it's a side effect of the overall weirdness at the time. Um, but I wondered perhaps if um, like because that bridge collapsed, which
Hmm.
was a terrible event and a terribly tragic for the town. I don't want to diminish that at all. Because of that, there was a law passed by LBJ that meant that all these other bridges had to go undergo regular inspection and
Yes.
maintenance, so the same thing wouldn't happen again. So imagine an alternate reality where there was a much larger disaster that
Okay.
couldn't be
Yeah.
prevented unless maintenance was done 20 years earlier. So something needed to happen in order to cause that law to go into effect to make that maintenance happen at a time where it would have counted, you know?
Hmm.
Um, so, I mean, you could, the easiest way to conceive of it is Mothman as a time traveler going back to ensure one bridge collapses. That's a big enough tragedy that it causes them to initiate legislation that would
Yeah.
prevent the larger bridge collapse later. And if you want to keep it within the Keeloverse, as it were, the
Yeah.
John Keel literature, he wrote extensively about predictions that didn't come true.
Yes.
But that's maybe because these entities are coming through talking about the Pope being assassinated, but because they were there to talk about it, that didn't come to pass,
Hmm.
right? So you have to wonder about predictions that don't come true. Is in some other reality, did they? you know?
Perhaps. The lately, I have been contemplating these things as symbolic. I've been asking, what if they are symbolic, you know, the way they look, the things they do, how they do them. When I say symbolic, I don't mean archetypes as archetypes. I don't mean to invoke Carl Jung because I think he in general is used too often in Fortean literature
Yeah,
these days. Not that he and his collective unconscious are irrelevant. It's just that I think too many Forteans like to sound intelligent by referring to him.
yeah. No, I'm with
Um,
you.
but again, I digress. But just that things about these entities, these figures may be symbols or symbolic, reflecting, you know, the percipient's thoughts, reflecting the conditions of the environment, the context they appear in. Look at this. Consider this, no one could outrun the Mothman.
Yeah,
Didn't matter that it was on unflapping wings and the recipients were in cars. They couldn't escape from him
right.
or it or whatever it was. The pursuit stopped only when he made it stop.
Yeah,
When he
yeah,
chose to end it. It was inevitable, just like the Silver Bridge collapse was inevitable,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense to me. Yeah. Um, and I take your point on symbols where I think it really does help to look at it that way, you know.
Hmm.
And uh, I think there are keys and clues that help you unlock the greater mystery when you think of things symbolically. You start to notice um, chains of events and things that are acausal or don't appear to be
Mhm.
direct causes for one another but are correlated somehow,
Usually thematically.
thematically, or like name games. Or I mean,
Mhm.
14s have been playing these kind of games for a long time.
Yes.
They had ones that they used to call Lexi Links,
Hmm.
which is just kind of a stream of consciousness, letting your thoughts just lead one to another, no matter how absurd it is, doing like little wordplay and little related things. Yeah, I mean, if anything else, if nothing else, it helps you to formulate an argument sometimes, because you'll suddenly contextualize it in a different way.
Yes.
Uh, I think humor does as well, though. I think sometimes you make a joke about something and you unintentionally um, circumvent logic and arrive at something kind of profound, and then you have to kind of um, reverse engineer that to
Yeah, or
figure
you
out
forget
why
it
that sounds right.
altogether and have to retrace your own steps.
Right? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
well, I've made plenty of joking suggestions before, and then thought about it a little bit, and as like you say, you're tracing my steps backwards, and I'm like, well, it's not that funny anymore, but
Hmm.
it actually makes a point. um,
Yeah, I just had an idea, as long as we're on the topic. The Hopkinsville Goblins, that's one of my first and earliest and most favorite Fortean stories. If I recall correctly, the family were farmers.
yeah, well, it was kind of like a farmhouse. Yeah,
Yeah, and the entities were impervious to gunfire. They
yep,
did whatever the hell they wanted. They stayed as long as they wanted. They didn't make things a nightmare for the family, but they did make them really irritating while they
yeah,
were there. Could that not have symbolized, the difficulties of farming, of living off the land? All the things that can
yeah,
go awry with lightning and storms and droughts and this and that.
yeah. I suppose so. I mean, I've heard kind of comparative.
I'm just pissing in the
Um,
wind.
no, I mean, well, I've heard. Okay, so I think it was kind of like a little farmhouse type thing, but the members of the family all had various occupations,
Okay, yeah.
um, and one of them was a carny. I remember
Okay.
that. So that it was one of the things that kind of led people to
Oh,
discredit the story as like, oh, he works at a carnival. Well,
mhm.
like, and they were characterized as being alcoholics, because they said, well, they were probably drunken hillbillies, even
But
though
alcohol is not a hallucinogen, and even if it was, hallucinogens don't cause episodes like that.
exactly, and also the family were like teetotalers, I think. Like
Okay.
I don't think any of them drank at all. So,
Oh.
um, or it wasn't allowed in the house or something like that. But yeah, and I mean, half the witnesses were children as well. There were a couple of children in the house. So, but I mean, yeah, that does get to a socioeconomic point about it, to your point, where I have heard that kind of contextualization of it, where people are talking about them being characterized as like country bumpkins and, the poor, unwashed, drunken hillbilly sort of
Hmm.
idea, and that's doesn't describe them at all.
No.
And I've gotten into this before as far as the question of credibility goes. When we're talking about credible witnesses,
Yes.
I think it's kind of a laughable concept anyway, because we've always prized the trained observer, quote unquote, as though there's some kind of training that makes you impervious to distortions in perception or memory or anything
Yes.
like that, which no human being really is. No
No.
amount of training really makes you like impervious to um, mistakes.
No. I'll use myself for example. By nature, I am a very focused, very detail-oriented person. But I'm also visually impaired and my glasses are often fogged.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah. right. But
and I suffer from chronic eye fatigue. So, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, well, with taking ufology, a lot of people will say like um, somebody in the armed services is more credible because they're a trained observer, you know.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, well, I've known veterans that are mentally ill. I've known veterans that are liars, and you see it in ufology. You see, you
Yeah.
know, you see people that were
I've
in the armed
known,
forces that lie, and it can
yeah,
be proven that they lied. You know,
I've
like
known, I've known armed forces members who, well into their 30s, subscribe to a very idiotic bro mentality.
yeah,
Good
right.
guys, good company at times, but not the most credible.
Right. But and I mean, just by virtue of the fact that somebody is a civilian, and especially if they're of a lower social class or economic class, whatever that may be at any given point in history, um, that they're it makes a difference whether somebody is going to take them seriously as a witness, right?
Yes.
And I feel like organizations like MUFON or prior to that NICAP or APRO would always really want to seek out like police officers that were
Yes.
willing to talk about because that was more credible, or a doctor that saw something, you know.
I would say police officers, yes, because they are
Yeah,
trained in observation, in quick response, in detail, in just being fastidious in regards to their surroundings in general. But doctors, not necessarily, unless they're
well,
heart surgeons who have to be like that. But
well,
a
yeah.
general practitioner, just what
Well, I
I'm
mean,
saying,
let's unpack that a little bit because I've
yeah.
known plenty of cops that are dumbasses too.
So have
Like
I.
I've known plenty of dumb police officers, and I've known plenty that made mistakes.
Yes.
Um, I've known plenty that were completely dishonest or just plain crooked, you know. Um, but I mean that's the myth of the trained observer is by virtue of the fact that they have some designation within society, they're a trained
Yeah.
observer. With doctors or sometimes politicians, these are considered credible witnesses more because of their social standing and what
Yeah.
they might have to lose if they come forward with a story.
That's
So
that's
that's
that's logical. You know, if
right.
someone is a degreed professional with a salary, and if they stand to lose six figures in a vacation home, potential vacation home, because the town thinks they're nuts, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I can
right.
see that. They would
But
have
that's why you have Dr. Stephen Greer and Dr. Jacobs. You know, these people in ufology like to make sure
Dr.
that
Johnny
doctor,
Mack, Dr.
uh, yeah,
Jerry
they want to make
Nolan.
sure that's very, very prominent there is the doctor part. Because if you have a doctor that says so, well, he's a doctor. You got to trust him, right? So,
Hmm.
but um, so I mean, but you know, all of this is to say that none of those things necessarily makes people all that much more credible. Um,
No,
and when I said the politician one, I mean, or you know, a diplomat, it makes me think of like the Linda Napolitano Manhattan abduction story, where people were so eager to cling on to that because they said a UN diplomat witnessed it from the bridge, right?
hmm,
And that's never been verified. You just have like
no,
these really sketchy people that apparently were security forces sometimes, but also detectives, but also kind of Men in Black type characters that may or may not have existed.
yeah,
Saying this, you know,
yeah,
but because there was a UN diplomat involved, allegedly, um, that was a story that people really, really wanted to hold on to because that lent it credibility, right?
hmm,
So, but this is where we get into this uh, this wild merry-go-round, which often breaks down within ufology
yeah,
of what the myth of credibility.
yeah.
I think of
And
it as yeah,
the flip side is equally true. I should preface, I'm not a class warrior. I'm
yeah,
not a class soldier. If anything, I am excessively bourgeoisie. But just because someone is a derelict or even a degenerate does not mean that their claims are invalid or that they are not credible, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's the other end of it. But that's what you tend to see is if somebody is um if it's like a high school janitor sees a UFO, people are going to be like, yeah, okay, buddy, I think you spent too long in the closet with cleaning chemicals, like
Yeah.
so um but I mean if the school principal saw it, then people might listen a little more,
But
so
objectively speaking, the principle is no more credible. If their sensory organs, if both men's sensory organs are in working order, then both are equally credible.
you
You
would think
know,
so, but what I'm saying is that seems to be the perception among investigators and broadly
general
is
public.
that historically, I mean, when you talk about the organizations I was referring to before,
Hmm.
they were overly eager to get the most credible sounding people possible
Hmm.
and kind of discard the wilder stuff and the people that they thought would be less credible, right? So
Yeah.
but I mean, you're dealing with the incredible, really. You're dealing with the anomalous.
Yeah.
So, and nobody has any real expertise. Nobody has material
No.
expertise over any of it because nobody knows what it is by definition.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of credibility is a nebulous and kind of dubious undertaking, right?
Yeah.
To establish what that even means.
Yeah. Well, credibility or evidence or proof. See, in this field, we have to define it differently than mainstream science because mainstream science rejects us right out the gate.
Yeah,
To us, you know, we don't because listen, I'm an experiencer myself. You're an experiencer.
yeah,
We know we saw what we saw. We know we heard what we heard, experienced what we experienced, and then that affected us on some level.
hmm
For us, that's all we need. And it could be argued that, oh, those are subjective experiences. They're not subject to empirical verification, so,
yeah. And
well,
some would use that
they
as a
just have to be
reason.
discarded. But
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
obviously, if you haven't had experiences like that yourself, you could easily think that way. You know, so what we have instead is this logic. Well, the X number of people have claimed to experienced this. The descriptions are consistent enough with enough differences that we could attribute it to natural variation, you know, that we can't say they're all just, making things up and basing their stories on previous experiences of others that they've read. You know what I mean? And then we just
Right.
go based on that. Yeah, yeah, technically, according to the standards of mainstream science, none of that means very much. But at some point, those standards become arbitrary, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Well, they have to be because you have to eventually settle on where you're going to start and end measuring things, right?
Yes.
But I mean, Charles Fort would have said you can start as you would measuring a circle and start anywhere, right? So
Mhm.
14ism at its core is kind of opposed to the scientific elitism, um, or the arrogance of scientism, I guess, material
Yes.
scientism. Yeah. Um, and I think it exists almost purely to thumb its nose at at the scientific method.
Yeah.
Um, so uh, in that sense, I'm all for it. I don't think people realize how funny Charles Fort was.
Yes.
He was very funny in his own way.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
amazing. For years, I have. worked in the field that he created, for which he is the namesake, and yet I've never actually read much of his writings. I
Right.
I don't think many of us have.
Well, I mean, I have the Book of the Damned. I think
Yeah, I do too.
has sections that you know that he was joking. You know,
Yes.
like he'll propose scenarios about like um you know where your socks go when they go missing. You know, like he'll use
Yeah.
that as an example. You know, so and a lot of things that he suggested in his books were meant to sound absurd at the time. Um, I think even the whole "I think we're property" line, where he suggests that we're just livestock for some intergalactic farmer. You know, um, a lot of it was him kind of half joking. I think he was
Mhm.
always half joking with most of
Yeah.
the stuff that he presented. So, which doesn't make it less profound. to, in
Yeah.
fact, it works better for me that way. You know.
Yeah. I would like to backtrack briefly to witness credibility. I didn't have a chance to say this then, but I do think there is an ageist bias in dismissals of children's experiences simply because they are children.
Oh, certainly, yeah, yep,
Yeah, because those are the dumbest dismissals right up there with, oh, he was probably sucking down too much hooch, too much moonshine.
right, right, right,
Oh, well, these were just kids. They have imaginations. Well, what the hell does that mean? They were just kids.
yeah,
They were kids with functioning sensory organs
yeah.
and memories.
Well, what's really fascinating is when you have a large group of children that all
Yes.
can consistently tell the same story. So when you have like the like Ariel school landing or the Broadhaven school landing, um, it, you know, they say, well, they all concocted a story and agreed to keep it, but it's like you can't have that many small children that all verify each other's experiences that well. That's just
Not at
nuts,
all.
right? So
Not at all. And the imagination argument is wearisome. It's like, yes, children have imaginations, but so do adults. And even then, what would the exact mechanism in the brain be that caused them to see or to hear this strange thing?
yeah, yep,
Was it, did they, without even trying, did their mind make them hallucinate? If so, why?
yeah,
Why? Why? Are their brains subject to glitches like that? If so, why is this not researched and discussed further? Why does the topic only arise when it's used as a means to dismiss a paranormal experience? You know,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think
their
you
answer,
also
go
run up
on.
against ethical questions when you're dealing with children too. So, in the sense of studying it or
Yes, definitely.
even publicizing stories in some cases, which is often why we don't, necessarily have full names of children that
Yeah.
experience things like.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I mean, I think a really good. There have been studies done with like Ian Stevenson's work on cases suggestive of reincarnation with small children that seem to remember a
Mhm.
past life, something they wouldn't have any basis for knowing about, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
And that's one thing. That's for the best because like I was a serial experiencer as a child myself. And I've made my stories public as an adult of my own volition. But I wouldn't have wanted, my stories publicized at the time.
yeah,
I wouldn't like the idea of, my name, my likeness, my biographical data, etc., appearing in, books on the paranormal at the times that complete strangers would have been reading about me in my home, and my parents, etc. at the time. I mean, you can now these
Yeah,
days, but not back then.
yeah, yep,
So again, yes, there are ethical considerations.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, that goes also along with things like, people that have disabilities, like anything that could seem exploitative, you know.
Yeah.
It's, but yeah, to your point, I mean, a lot of us don't really have anything to gain by coming forward and sharing this other than maybe
No.
camaraderie with other people that had
Yeah.
similar experiences. So,
And you mention ethical considerations, people with diminished capacities. What then do you make of Richard Shaver?
oh,
Because he
yeah,
was,
I mean, that's a difficult one because then you have to think that there is the school of thought that it does seem likely that maybe Ray Palmer was kind of taking advantage of him to some degree.
yeah,
Um, but also they seem to be really friendly. They're like neighbors. They like moved
yeah.
out together to buy
And
farms next to each other. So, maybe it was like he was an eccentric guy that obviously, I think he was a diagnosed schizophrenic, if I'm not
yeah, and he was
wrong.
institutionalized for a number of years.
Yeah, yeah, I actually at it briefly at one point at a hospital not far from me, which
Okay.
is strange. I don't know why he was in Massachusetts for a short period of time. Might have just been transferred to that facility for a little while, but uh, yeah, I mean, I think they developed a working relationship together and maybe understood each other on some level.
Yeah. Well, listen,
Especially because, well, I mean, Ray Palmer also had physical limitations. I mean,
yes.
I guess he had been run over by a cart or something like that, or a truck when he
Hmm.
was a kid, and he was kind of a hunchback and
Hmm.
also just small statured anyway.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think maybe the two of them were simpatico on being limited, and then they had a working relationship that complemented each other well and was mutually beneficial. So
Yeah.
it's
And
hard to say. I wasn't there, so I don't know. But you can look at the evidence and kind of decide for yourself.
Shaver may have been unglued on some level, but he was also intelligent,
Yeah.
well spoken. If I own a compilation of his writings, his pseudo fiction writings, which have
Yeah.
been republished by a niche publisher. I've gotten them as Christmas gifts. Um, his prose is very pretentious, very purpley, but you can tell he read widely.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though, is that there is some debate over how much of it he wrote and how much was Palmer,
Yes. Yeah.
because Palmer at the very least edited it, which might mean that he punched it up, and it might mean that he rewrote the whole thing and added a bunch of stuff for
Yeah.
continuity. So it's hard to say like stylistically if that was
It
how Shaver
yeah.
wrote or not.
It would have been interesting or it would be interesting to see the original manuscripts if indeed they still exist.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you skeptics can use the fact of his schizophrenia to dismiss his claims, but there is the chance that schizophrenia may not just be derangement, utter derangement of the senses, to go back to Burroughs, that it could be at times. I don't want to sound like one of these idiots who thinks, you know, each and every case of mental illness is a gift from the gods, but there's a chance that some cases of schizophrenia may indeed be how do I put this? You know what I'm saying.
No, yeah, I mean,
May actually
there's
be a mental openness to the unseen world, or
yeah,
maybe
I
a
mean,
form of
yeah,
expanded
I mean,
perception. I don't remember where or when, but a study was done where the brain waves, the mental activity of shamans in a shamanic trance were studied, and they were seen to be similar to those of schizophrenics all the time. The theory was that shamanism is a kind of temporary, voluntary, self-induced schizophrenia. So if we look at Shaver through that lens, and we consider that, you know, much of his claims, much of his narrative does dovetail with other Fortean narratives more generally. Despite himself, he may have been on to something. Palmer himself claimed that he thought his experiences were real. It's just that he wasn't really in the hollow earth. He was in more of a immaterial realm with immaterial beings,
mhm.
and that he may have just been interpreting it as the hollow earth, or it may have been presented to him as the hollow earth, just create a tangible context that he could through which he could understand it. What's your take on all that?
I think any and all of that is probably true. um, yeah, it's strange, and I mean, I think so much of it overlaps with various other myths and legends and Fortiana, as you had pointed out, and ufological type things. It almost seems like the Shaver mystery is a nexus point within all of the highly weird, you know?
Do you think it could have consisted of archetypal contents coming through his subconscious? That his
um,
mind, that his mind, perhaps aided by some unseen intelligence, molded into a coherent narrative?
um, could be, but I mean, I tend to think that there's multiple factors at play. Um, I do think that Palmer had a knack for sensationalism and a
Yes.
story that will sell, and it was relatively shameless in spreading things around. So, um, I think figures like that are intrinsic to this whole machine of fringy weirdness and high weirdness um, that weaves its way through the culture more broadly. And I tend to think of studying the weird as being almost a study of human culture and progress and history from the outside looking in a way, you
Yes.
know, like seeing little invisible threads that pull things together that most people wouldn't notice. Um, but they are highly influential.
Yeah, because when you deconstruct his narrative, when you look at each element in isolation, there's nothing new there. The idea of a hollow earth inhabited by intelligent, you know, intelligent bipeds,
Yeah, yeah.
that that's nothing new. The idea of,
Lemuria, the
yeah,
name Lemuria.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
the idea of these entities remotely influencing human thoughts and behavior, that's nothing new. That's found in many, if not every, world religion. Um, the idea of a civilization before our own, of a great cataclysm, again, that's nothing new. And I don't know how well read he was prior to his revelation, but I really, again, it really was a creative regurgitation of standard motifs. of
Yeah,
things he likely was already familiar with, of things readers and even well-read laymen would already have been familiar with. And so it's like around the world we have all these different flood myths which tell variations of the same tale, the same archetypal story.
yeah,
It, it almost it, it almost falls into that category. And that leads me to believe there is some factual basis to it. It's just his mind's spin on it, as processed through his subconscious. I don't know.
yeah. No,
Uh,
it's difficult to say. Yeah,
um,
because there certainly have been equally crazy or crazier ideas. So, um, and from people that are quote unquote sane, not
yes.
necessarily schizophrenic or anything like that. Um, so yeah, like I said, it's difficult to tell, but I think the cultural impact, which I think is more widely recognized now than maybe it used to be, um, when you're looking at a more holistic perspective for the whole history of ufology.
Yes.
Um, like I had interviewed the author Charles Lear, and he wrote a book
Mhm.
called The Flying Saucer Investigators, and I really appreciated that he started the book talking about Palmer and Shaver. He didn't start with Kenneth Arnold.
Yeah.
He went back a little bit earlier, and I really appreciated that because the standard narrative forever was always like, well, Kenneth Arnold saw these flying discs, and he said that, or these flying craft, and they got named flying saucers, and here we
Yep.
are. This is the beginning of it,
Even
and
though they were in
Roswell,
fact cigar shaped.
right, or chevron shaped. I think it's described some in some places, but
Yeah.
regardless, I mean, I think um, I didn't learn about the Shaver mystery from watching Unsolved Mysteries when I was younger.
Yeah.
Like the media in the '90s growing up was all around Roswell,
Yes. Yes. There
which
was
didn't
even a TV
even
show which introduced Katherine Heigl to the world.
right. Yeah.
Um,
Um, but yeah, anytime there was a UFO related thing, I'd see Stanton Friedman on TV talking about Roswell and stuff like that. And um, uh, I think nowadays with greater access to online media and the work of certain people that are really pulling the stuff out and dissecting it and doing a better job of writing a history about it. We're kind of learning these little threads and seeing how the pulp
mhm.
sci-fi prior is really part of the story.
Oh yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
not something different. Um,
Palmer is at times credited with coining the phrase flying saucer.
yeah, right. Yeah, and I mean, I have an issue of Astounding Science Fiction. I think it's just or Astonishing Science Fiction. I can't remember which one it was, but I have an issue of one of the ones that he edited, and where he talks about the just in the editorial part at the beginning, he talks about the Kenneth Arnold sighting, which had just happened,
Yeah.
and he's like, this is validation for Richard Shaver's stories that you've all been writing me hate mail about, you know.
Hmm.
It's kind of cool, but um, uh, but yeah, I mean that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with mass media in the form of movies or TV
Hmm.
shows, or in this case, pulp fiction writings, um, back all the way to Poe, which you also mentioned, and down through the ages, back to ancient mythology and religious topics and narratives. They all kind of weave their way through each other, which is
Yeah.
why the kind of symbolic and uh, a causal causality method of looking at things sometimes brings you to insights that you wouldn't have otherwise
Hmm.
achieved. Yeah.
Now, Woodrow Derenberger
Hmm.
can fall into the same category as Shaver in that, his mental health was debatable, in that the factuality of his claims are debatable, in that, they can be interpreted on multiple levels, and in that they made him something of a cause celebrity in his day. What is your take on Darren Berger? It's interesting that Keel dismissed Shaver's claims. He also dismissed Darren Berger's, though he was kind enough to write the intro to his first book. What's your
Hmm.
take on him?
Uh, I mean, I don't know that I've done enough of a deep dive on Derenberger to um to really have a strong opinion on it.
Hmm.
But from what I do know, it seems like he was really late to the game for the whole contactee thing, you know.
Yes.
Um, so he was kind of a fish out of water with that, where he's meets injured cold in the '60s, and then has this whole voyage to Lanulos part of it, um, which all sounds sort of similar to like Al Bender, and his
Men in Black.
Men in Black encounter. Yeah, the three men. Um, and Bender is another case where his mental stability was questionable.
It's
So
interesting, though, in that both Bender and Darren Berger inadvertently spawned a new category of Fortean entity, or at least popularized one. With Bender, it was the Men in Black. With Darren Berger, it was the Grinning Man. Though obviously, Bender's Men in Black have been far more prominent, far more influential.
well, how
There's
about this idea that I just kind of thought of since we're talking about this? We talk about Shaver as somebody like a perceiver of unseen worlds, basically, right? And
yes.
Palmer as the scribe.
Hmm.
You might think about this like in terms
Dean
of
Kelly?
John D and Kelly, and then and when you get to Bender, you have the Barker as the scribe, Gray
Yes.
Barker, and then when you have Injured Cold, you have Keel as the scribe. It's like this pairing that keeps happening.
Yeah, I've never noticed that. That's cool.
Well, I only just noticed it right now since we're talking
I
about
only noticed
it,
it since you mentioned it.
but that might be worth pulling apart at some point.
Yeah, but yeah, again, I wonder how much the Derenberger saga really had to do with the Mothman, other than time and place. Could that have just been coincidence? I know, you know, I
um,
I know you would think they're connected in some way, but I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hesitate to think that there's any such thing as coincidence with the amount of synchronicity I live with on a daily basis, but I think everything's connected in some way.
Well,
Um,
could because to my knowledge, and again, I'm no expert, Cole never mentioned the Mothman or the Silver Bridge collapse to Derenberger.
yeah, I mean, it was part and parcel of the UFO activity that was going on in Point Pleasant at the same time the Mothman stuff was,
Yes.
though. So, I mean, when you read the Mothman prophecies, it's a lot less about Mothman and way more about the mysterious men in black that were around there,
Yes.
and the UFOs that. Um, and I think John Keel was originally down there looking for flying cats. I think that's what brought him to West Virginia to begin with, was like winged
Interesting.
cats. Um, I had read that somewhere at some point, but
It's worth noting that Colt himself wasn't a man in black.
yeah,
He
he
had
wore like a
some,
green suit, right?
yeah, he had some overlap with them, but ultimately he was an entity unto himself.
Yeah, But I mean, it's later revealed that he was from Lanulos, right?
Yeah.
So that makes it more of the contactee kind of,
Yeah.
um, because then I think they bring Derenberger to Lanulos in the book that he wrote about it, which I've never actually read, but that's my
Hmm.
understanding of it, you know. Um, and then his daughter kind of continued that,
Yes.
and yeah, I can't
Now,
remember her name.
the friend I was
Tanya, Tanya Derenberger.
don't
Yeah,
remember. Don't remember, but she has claimed that yes, strange men did appear in their home. They did walk around their backyard with her father
right.
conversing. But
Yeah,
then
and
again,
she stayed in touch with them too. Like prior to her death, like a few years before she died, she was saying like Carl Ardo had come back to talk to her to tell her that
okay.
somebody, Indrid Cold had died or something like that.
Ooh.
I can't remember the exact thing, but it was at one point she had received word that one of the space contacts had passed away. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Well, supposing those are real or were real, Indrid Cold and his associates, what do you think they were? I'm just your best guess.
well, I mean, they're inhabitants of the planet Lanulos. What else do you need to know?
I guess.
Right? I mean, like when we talk about assuming things are real, I mean, what leads you to have to question what exactly reality means?
Yeah, yeah, that's an
And
issue with
it
long
gets easier
term.
to question every day with our insane
Well, that
world that we live
again,
in
that's
now.
an issue with long term Forteana involvement, is you begin to question the definitions of just basic terms that most people take for granted, basic concepts that most people have never considered. Again, what is reality? In this case, if we've established that, maybe the things seen under the influence of drugs are real, maybe things seen and heard in psychotic states and by schizophrenics are real, if we've things seen in dreams and hypnagogic and hypnopompic states are real, if we've blurred the lines between subjective and objective experience to the point where the term hallucination is now meaningless. Can we actually speak meaningfully of real and fake anymore? Can we?
I don't think we can. Um,
And I don't know if
eh,
that's even a good thing.
well, I don't think it is, but I mean, the quote unquote reality out there right now is pretty terrifying. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of people being blown up and a lot of people being uh, dragged out of their homes and a lot of people suffering and starving and dying. And
Mhm.
uh, um, it's nice once in a while to think about Lanulos where people are closed, um, don't wear clothes and are free and happy and always fed. uh, I hope it's out there. I hope it's real. I'd like to go there. Sounds like a good time.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. Again, we're at the point now where when we can't even begin to speculate on what Cole may or may not have been based on his appearance, on his behavior, on how he came and went,
Hmm.
in comparison to other 14 entities. We can't. Like I asked you what you thought because I had no idea myself, and you couldn't respond because of what we're just now discussing. So,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah, and also because it's been a long time since I read about
Yeah.
Woody Derenberger, and I never read his book. Um, I just kind of know about it. I've heard people talk about it, so I think but yeah, I mean, I could be wrong about several
Hmm.
things related to the whole
Yeah.
story. I think I
But
have it mostly right, but
as long as we're in this frame of mind right now, what do you think? Oh, I don't know. The black-eyed children are. How would you interpret them?
vampires. I think they're akin to vampires.
Literal no fooling vampires?
Yeah, yeah, because
How so? I
vampires
don't.
are real. Well, the dead giveaway is that they always seem to ask permission to come in. You know,
Okay, now
and
you
that's
just
that's a
said
total vampire thing.
you just
So
said vampires are real. Now earlier we discussed the importance of humor in this context. And I just discussed, and you agreed, how real and fake are no longer valid concepts. So what did you mean by vampires are real?
I mean that um I mean that literally and figuratively and humorously all at the same time. I believe that there are entities out there that can sap your vitality.
Parasites, yes.
Right. Or what I like to refer to as psychic vampires, and that's a very real thing.
Yes.
Um,
But those are
and
usually human and unknowing.
but there's discarnate ones too, is
Yes.
what I'm saying. And and yeah, I think that a lot of what people frame as demonic are kind of vampiric entities like that, you know. Um, so I mean, you could say that black-eyed children. I think people there are some people that would probably frame that as demonic or as demons, right?
Yes. And
Uh,
understandable.
yeah, right. But I mean, my framework for what a demon is and is not is different, just because of my massive amount of reading about occult subject matter and and ritual magic and various streams of mysticism.
Yes.
My conception of the demonic is different. So I don't use demons as a word to describe necessarily like every negative entity that exists.
No.
Um, I don't necessarily think demons are negative, uh, but vampires are.
Yes.
you know, so that's why I would describe black-eyed children as being more vampiric.
But, and I've discussed this in my video on them. They do themselves no favors with their appearance and their mode of speech.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you want access to people's homes, to people themselves, you have to appear and act in a way that won't repel them and cause them to slam the door in your face. You
Yeah,
know, the
but
pale
they act.
skin, the black eyes, the monotone speech, that is total repellent.
Um, yeah, it is, but it's also entirely uncanny.
Yes.
So there is something about uncanniness that I've written about before. Whether you're talking about Men in Black or Black Eyed Kids or even Phantom Clowns, there's an uncanny element to it that um, more than just being terrifying or creepy or repellent, as you say.
Yes.
Um, Uncanniness can put you into a kind of shock zone where uh,
Defenses
you're
are down.
you're ontologically assaulted and you're paralyzed.
Yes.
So people think of fight or flight, but there is a third response that is paralysis, right?
Yes.
um, and when you're faced with the uncanny and there's something that's known as shock hypnosis, shock induction of hypnosis. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this before.
I have not.
The simplest explanation for it would be is if you went up behind somebody and you kind of tap them on the shoulder, and as they're turning to look at you, you just kind of kick their knees out so they start
Yes.
to fall. and then you catch them at the same time. And in that moment of free fall and confusion, they don't know what's going on. They're very susceptible.
Yes.
So I have heard this from hypnotists before. I have no hypnotic training myself, but my understanding is that shock induction is a way to, um, you know, uh, put somebody into a trance state without their agreeing to
Okay.
it. you
I
know,
get that.
so I think that if you're presented with something uncanny, like a man dressed in a black suit that looks brand new, even though it looks old fashioned, and he comes into your store and he's puzzling over a pen like he's never seen one before. Um, you're the weird behavior and the weird mannerisms and the weird things he says are going to put you kind of in this weird twilight zone
Yes.
of uncanniness where you're just going like your mind can't really figure out what's going on. It can't catch up to what's happening, and in that moment you're very susceptible.
Do you
So yeah.
do you think though it could just be a lack of self-awareness at the same time, and that would explain why they almost always fail while at the same time never modifying or updating their approach, their technique?
Well, my argument is that
I'm just
it's a
throwing it out
feature.
there. Okay.
My argument is it's a feature, not a bug. Um, People think that it's like, well, they're trying to appear human, but they failed. Obviously, like they didn't quite make it there. I mean, there's plenty of accounts, like in Mac Tony's Crypto Terrestrials book, of
Mhm.
um, things that appear very look like gray aliens trying to pretend to be human, just wearing a wig or something like that. You know?
Yes, like I read this one, I believe in Nick Redfern's The Women in Black, of the it was like a gray alien in a long black wig and like a leather jacket and women's clothing buying cigarettes.
Yeah, that's in Crypto Terrestrials. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
there's
that's
a
interesting.
great illustration by Mike Clellan of this
Well,
scene in the store.
that's interesting because Keel was convinced, man, that the all these entities are adept shapeshifters. They can appear effortlessly in any form they please. And that they don't actually have a set form. It's just, these orbs, these blobs of light that can morph into anything. But we do have cases indicating that that may not be the case.
Right. And I mean, Mac Tony's argues as a thought experiment that perhaps they're doing it specifically to put on a show for people for whatever reason, um, showing up like a gray alien that looks like it's trying to pass as human.
Yes.
Um, there's another great story from a Spanish contactee from the 50s of a pair of like smaller gray aliens wearing adult sized clothing coming into the diner that her family ran, like the cafe that her family ran late at night and ordering coffee. Um, it's just like a wild, weird story, and but yeah, like I said, I think it's a feature and not a bug. I think the whole point is to show up and uh, really alter somebody's reality in a way that makes them susceptible to something else, you
Yeah.
know. Uh, and what that something else uh, is different for everybody, because if you can put somebody in hypnotic state, you can lead them to believe anything, and we
Yeah.
know this because hypnotic regression has been used for alien abduction scenarios, even
It has
though
recreated them.
yeah, or created them whole cloth
Yeah.
and
That's what I
and
meant.
reinforced them. Yeah, because it's we know that hypnosis is not necessarily, if at all, a memory retrieval tool. It's been relatively proven that hypnosis doesn't make you remember things better. You know, or it can, but it can also just, like AI now, hallucinate shit. You know,
Yes.
so uh, if some entity, whether human or otherwise, is able to um, use some form of shock induction through just bizarre behavior and uncanniness,
Hmm.
um, then whatever happens after that, whether it's a trip to Lanulos or you know, seeing something that looks like the Flatwoods monster,
Hmm.
uh, anything's on the table at that point because
Yeah, we don't
yeah,
know what their goal is in these episodes. We don't know what their goal would be in inducing this state. Is it something benign like an awakening, an initiation, or something more malign like a possession or an attachment?
my thought is we can't possibly know because their frame of reference for reality is so um, uh, so exponentially different from ours, like orders of magnitude different from ours. um, so, I mean, I like to use the example that when I'm observing my cat in my house, I really don't
Mhm.
have any idea what she's thinking. There are
Yes.
things she does that I just don't have any idea why she does that.
Yeah.
Or I often wonder, like, what's her life like? What's she thinking about when she is just laying around?
Yeah.
You don't know, but you coexist with the cat, right?
Hmm.
Now, if you think about something that lives on another dimension or lives outside of time, lives outside of linear time, um, uh, not only is it a different species, it's a different kind of life form altogether.
Yeah.
Like think of a if a life form can be based plasma based, just
That's
plasma
that's
and
what we're going
consciousness.
with.
A lot of people say that now.
Yeah.
People
That's
are saying that there's
that's the
plasma
working
guys.
theory.
Yeah, but if there are plasma beings that are like literally just plasma and consciousness, then their perspective and what they're able to do with that consciousness, you could say better or worse than ours, but really it's so different that things like motivation um, aren't even on the table for discussion. Like
Yeah.
you, you can't really. It would be like trying to sit down and sit down at a table and draw up a contract with an ant. Like you wouldn't do that, right?
Yeah.
Likewise, it would be like trying to do that with one of the gods from the Greek pantheon or the Norse
Yes.
pantheon. Like
Well, they were
you don't
pretty
have.
anthropomorphic.
Yeah, they were okay, but suppose they're speaking Greek or whatever the. Let's use one of the Indian gods. Those are a little bit less scrutable, you know.
More
Um,
abstract.
yeah, exactly. But that's why. I mean, speaking of the Indian gods, if you've ever read the Bhagavad Gita, there's a point where like Krishna is showing his true form to Arjuna after saying he wasn't going to. He kept saying he wouldn't do it, and then he does, and it's too much for Arjuna to handle. Uh, 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 in my contacts with some of these entities, they've a message has come through to that effect, where um, like I could try to tell you, but there's no possible way that you'd get it.
Doesn't even Yahweh speak to that in the Bible? No man sees my face and lives, though I'm probably misquoting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a common conceit when you're talking about gods, but I, or God in a religious context. But my point is that if you're living in another plane of reality, um, even the term "living" becomes a nebulous one
Yeah,
to apply.
because you're not speaking of things that are alive. They're not life forms as we are. They don't, they're not born. They don't grow up. They don't age. They don't have respiratory systems, etc. You know what I mean? They're not. They exist, but they're not alive.
Exactly.
So
And I mean,
existing.
maybe there's something about our form of life that they covet. and that's an argument people often make, is that there are beings that are discarnate
Yeah.
that have a have no need of anything, but they do have the desire to experience things, and they want to
Yeah.
inhabit corporeal forms periodically to have
Hmm.
the experience of life, you know.
Now,
So,
earlier you mentioned reading vast amounts of esoteric literature.
uh-huh.
This will most likely be entirely speculative. What entities from esoteric literature do you believe say the Greys are?
um
Shot in the dark.
yeah, I mean, I don't
Column
know
A,
that
column B.
I don't know that there is like a one-to-one equivalent for them within occultism. I mean, there are people that would compare. Again, there are the people that believe it's demons, right?
Yes.
Um, to me, gray aliens, at least from what I've read and from what the uh, popular idea of them seems to be, is they almost seem like a hive mind of insectoid type um, beings.
Hmm.
So they almost seem like automatons to me. They don't seem to have individual personalities and consciousness. So,
I've read
um,
stories where they do speak and they seem to have individual consciousness, or they have a conversation with the recipient in a very normal way as a fully defined individual would.
yeah, yeah, and sometimes they seem to have like a long running relationship with the experiencer,
Yeah.
where they have a sense of feeling like they know the entity or they've known them from before or something. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to like use the Whitley Strieber model, um, which I don't think is a bad one, it's a predominant one. I think they probably most closely align with psychopomps.
Yes.
So like kind of guiding from one realm of life to a realm of not life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That has stood out to me in recent months is abductees seeing dead relatives, dead friends, etc. on gray craft, for lack of a better
Mhm.
term. Or I should
Yep.
have just said during their abductions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's not as though I'm the first one to point this out. I mean, Whitley himself writes that it's his wife Anne had brought that up, that this has to do with death, right? So um, it has to do with the afterlife. Um, so yeah, I think if there was any entity within myth or cult or esoteric terms, probably psychopomp would be the best for the Greys.
All right. Then what about the BEKs? To go back to them briefly.
Well, I told you, man, they're vampires.
I know, but like what terms in real old, we're talking medieval to Renaissance era literature, if such terms exist, if and any entities are discussed in that literature that could be interpreted as an earlier culture's understanding of what we now call BEKs.
I mean, vampires go back that far.
I know they do, but I guess what I'm saying is the vampire concept existing independently or predating the image we know from Romanian and Hungarian folklore, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Okay. So I guess the question is, what else could they be? I'm
Yeah,
not sure I
well,
understand
I
the
don't
question.
know because like I've read occult literature extensively, and yet I've never really come across vampires therein. And so I don't associate them with the occult. I associate them more with folklore. Um, and while there obviously is overlap, the two are also very distinct. You know,
Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, Dion Fortune wrote about vampirism uh,
yeah,
in the early 20th century in the book Psychic Self-Defense.
yes,
She's talking more about like human vampires,
yeah.
psychic vampires. Yeah, but yeah, I think you know BEKs are tough just because they seem to have a moment in the sun for a short period of time, um, with a few kind of high-profile accounts, and then it's been difficult for me to find any accounts that didn't feel like creepypastas since then. And I could be
Yeah,
wrong, and maybe I just didn't read them, but I feel like
I,
they're really far and few between, you know?
see, I've noticed, 40 entities, theirs is a cyclical existence. There will be like the initial s- encounter or encounters that puts them on the map, and then they will be the focus of a lot of media, like a lot of writings, essays, articles, videos, maybe a documentary, maybe a book or two. And then after that, they just kind of fade into the internet, and they become fodder for campfire stories and entertainment, for YouTube compilations, top 50
Yeah.
scariest this entity stories found on Reddit. And as I discussed in my video on them, it seems like the black stick men never really got their day in the sun. Like in the early 2010s, when I first discovered them, they were new, they were being hyped. And it looked to me like they were going to be the next big thing, just like shadow people were in the 2000s.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen for them. And the BEKs kind of, sort of took off for a while. But they too have really, really faded. Again, they're just fodder for YouTube videos now. And I have found a number of good BEK stories, of stories that pique my interest, that I think are legit, that something happened, that are we could glean some insights from, that are clearly not creepy pastas. But again,
Okay.
there are still a hell of a lot of creepy pastas.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had, personal accounts of BEKs related to me that the witness didn't want to share specifics about, except privately, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not as though there are none, but yeah, I mean, I think generally they're harbingers of something worse to come.
Okay.
I think it would be really bad to actually let them in the house. And I don't know. I
They
have heard
almost,
stories where somebody said they did and then like got cancer and died or
yeah,
something like that. And I'm not sure if that story was true or what, but
they almost never make it in. We have plenty of stories of them getting the boot, getting the door slammed in their face, but hardly
right.
any of them getting in. I think I've heard two, three tops. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, and the ones that I have heard of that are really suspicious sounding the way they're written, they just seem like creepypastas to me. But
they're
um
almost too literary.
yeah, it sounds like somebody just doing what do they call it on Reddit? A writing exercise,
Yep.
like creative writing.
Yeah.
So, um, so yeah, I mean, if anything, I do think that they are, some form of vampiric entity, like, um, and I don't know that there's necessarily a great term for that within occult circles, but I mean, there's so many different schools of occult thought anyway. and a lot of it is a lot more recent than people would uh, like to believe.
Yes.
Really, like within the last 200 years. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. Um, but I mean, they seem to be extra dimensional in some way, and similar to the Men in Black. Um, so, uh, I all I really know is that I wouldn't want to meet one. I'm perfectly happy not meeting one. You know.
I had a dream about one once, but it was just a dream.
Yeah. See that? Even that, I don't think I want.
Yeah.
Was it scary?
Yeah, it was Halloween night.
Oh wow.
So the morning of November 1st, the wee hours, I fell asleep and I dreamed I was just in my home. I didn't realize I was dreaming, so I thought it was like literally later that same morning. I thought I had woken up and this was actually happening. I don't remember how I heard, if I heard the doorbell ring or a knock on it, but I got up and opened it, and there was a little black-eyed girl in a contemporary dress
Hmm.
smiling up at me. I don't, I think she just asked me if she could come in, and then I closed the door, and then I woke up knowing immediately that it was a dream. I wasn't scared at all. So
Huh.
I was a little unnerved. I thought, at first, I wondered, oh, have I been dwelling on them too much? Have they taken notice? Are they now pursuing me? And then I thought, or it could be I've been dwelling on them too much, and my subconscious has taken notice, and it's created this dream for me. You know?
Could be. Yeah. I mean, I always feel like I rarely talk about my dreams in particular because they don't happen very often these days.
Yeah.
But um, I have difficulty with dreams because it's like I kind of like the way Soraya puts it on Where Did the Road Go, where he talks about the big dreams and then kind of like the regular dreams, um,
Yes.
where you can feel that there's a difference, Um,
By,
I've had
by
I've had some of those, but they're usually not scary. The entities that I contact or run into in those dreams are rarely ever been scary.
well, I
So
for me, big dreams mean dreams with a lot of emotional substance, emotionally relevant
yeah,
substance that has nothing to do with Fortiana that, and I wake up and it's powerful. It's still with me like several minutes later, and then I think about it during the day. Uh,
yeah. I mean,
that,
there's those. I think that would probably be the popular use of
yeah,
that term. But the way I think that's how Soraya describes it is maybe he just uses that as an analogy. Maybe I'm misquoting him. Uh, but I mean, for me, like I have dreams that will have an entirely different mood that don't feel like my dreams normally feel.
hmm.
They're weirdly more vivid and they have a different kind of hue to them. And often those end up being premonitory dreams
Okay.
or dreams of some kind of profound impact,
Hmm.
But I don't know that they're even worth talking about because then at the end of the day, you're just like, but it was just a dream. And
Yeah.
like I think some people would find that frustrating. So I don't know that it's worth getting into, other than the fact that some of them are very much verifiable premonitions.
Yes.
So those ones seem to be worth it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never really had a supernatural dream. I've had, at least that I can verify as supernatural. I've had dreams that felt supernatural both during and after, but in hindsight, upon inspection, they seem more just dreams, more just symbolic of things I was going through at the time.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and there's no reason it can't be both. Like sometimes it's
Yeah.
both.
Well, one I had, this was, I was in my very early 20s in college, I was in this what looked like a luxury hotel on top of this mountain in what I assumed was somewhere in Central or Eastern Europe, like in the Carpathians. And I was laying there in this hotel room watching something on television, and I got the impression it was a Sunday and it was gray, and I was the only one there in the whole building. And all of a sudden, the it was impressed upon me that it's time to turn this off, time to get up and go, get moving. So I did. So the next thing I know, I'm walking along the side of the mountain, ostensibly on my way home, and I see this sports car behind me. It pulls up right beside me. The window goes down and the driver's face appears. And then I turn my head and suddenly, like, the driver's face expands, takes up my entire frontal vision. And he's like this blonde guy, looks like a villain from a 1980s teen movie. You know, the jock with the feathered blonde hair,
Hmm.
the Letterman jacket, the preppy like scarf.
Hmm.
Well, his eyes are solid black, and his speech is very raspy and mechanical. He's like, "I will always be better than you. I will always be faster than you. You will never catch up to me." And all right, no argument. So then the window goes back up, and he jets off in front of me, and then I wake up. And I was really creeped out, like, oh, did some negative entity appear to me in my dream? Is that what that was? And then I realized eventually, no, the whole thing was symbolic. At the
Right.
time, I was in college, but I was still living at home. I didn't even have a driver's license.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so thus I had it's time to get up and go. All right, grown up watching a lot of those trashy 80s teen comedies, so that's where that image came from.
Right.
As for the I'll always be better than you, always be faster than you, well, I had always been intimidated by cool guys, of which I was
Hmm.
never one. I was never a jock, never a ladies' man or anything like that. And then as for the landscape, as for the environment, well, I'd always been fascinated by, that part of Europe. So really, even though it came across as sinister and supernatural, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm just amused that the antagonist appeared as a 1980s asshole jock and not as
Right.
a 2000s asshole jock, which would have been more appropriate to my experience. But
Right. Yeah. Well, he sounds like kind of reminds me of who's that character in the Spider-Man comics that was like the always trying to like the jock that's always trying to like mess with Peter Parker. Uh, that's what it reminds me of. But
but uh,
Flash Thompson or something like
yes,
that. Yeah.
funnier
Yeah.
still, the jocks and cool guys in real life never gave me a hard time. They were always
Yeah.
cool with me, mainly because they hardly knew I existed. In real life, none of them would have ever engaged me or addressed me like that.
Yeah, but it was like this trope that from the
Yeah,
movies that
was
kind of hit you.
entirely
Yeah.
that intimidation, that fear of them, that was entirely on me. That really spoke to my insecurities at the time.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and it can be, like I said, it can be multiple things at the same time. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I had a period of a couple months where I was regularly having dreams with little people in them.
Hmm.
Um, and I've thought about it here and there because this was back in, I think, 2022.
Hmm.
um, and every once in a while, it's popped into my head lately, and I'm like, man, you know, I've never been in the habit of keeping a dream journal, and that would have been a fine time to start if I had done it then, because I wish I could more accurately remember what the dreams were. But
Yes.
the fact of the matter is that once a month I'd have a dream where I ran into the little people for like 4 months straight.
Okay.
So some of them were really strange. um, and one of them actually felt like some kind of initiation on another plane. Like a literal invisible college uh, on the astral.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, so that could have been my mind processing things one way or another, or it could have been actual intelligences from beyond, or it could have been both. You know,
Yeah.
but it was kind of strange how it seemed to be that kind of regularity. Once a month, I would have one of these dreams and encounter the little people in it.
Yes.
So and by little people, I mean could have been elves, could have been grays, but they were very human in appearance whenever I saw them. So
Yes.
just they looked like like Warwick Davis and stuff like that. Like basically like literal little people, but also the little people of legend. So yeah,
What is it with shortness? With these things being short, that's a motif going back centuries. That must be an
it is.
actual
Yeah, it
built-in
is.
feature of their appearance. They must naturally be short, and then they carry that into whatever external form they take. Like whatever other outward characteristics they take on, they always retain their shortness.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's hard to say because when you talk about like the fairy folk, they're not necessarily even things like leprechauns aren't necessarily described as being small in the folklore.
Mhm.
Um, Often fairies are the same size as humans. Um, but yeah, I mean there is like always been some degree of littleness going on, but yeah, I don't know that was a strange series of dreams, and that I will have to at some point try to collect my thoughts of what I can remember from them. And but I feel like there's some really important stuff missing
Yeah.
because it's been long enough, and I didn't write it down, or I did write it down, and I don't know where I put it. So yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't know that I've ever had a supernaturally significant dream or a where I could definitely say, yes, something appeared to me, something interacted with me. I don't know if I ever have. I doubt it. I doubt it. I've had dreams about supernatural things, but those again were just dreams reflecting my interest in them, I'm pretty sure.
hmm yeah. I mean, I've had plenty, and uh, I think part of that is just like I said, the premonition dreams are the ones that are like, okay, there's something to it because
Yeah.
the thing I dreamed literally happened.
Yeah.
So that's it's easy to verify. So then it kind of leads you to wonder more about some of the others, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, some of the earliest dreams I can remember were had supernatural elements to them
Okay.
and seemed to be. I was a very active dreamer when I was a kid,
Hmm.
and from what I'm told, I also would sleepwalk.
That's
Um,
creepy. I mean, I'm not saying sleepwalking makes a person creepy. Obviously, it doesn't. But the thought that you could be walking around at night in the dark alone without even knowing it, without even knowing where you're going is creepy. And when I say creepy, I don't necessarily mean in the supernatural sense. I just mean in the
it's a weird quirk of like
yeah.
human biology and psychology that can happen. Yeah, I mean, at one
Yeah.
point. and I would do things that were uncharacteristic too. Like, I guess I was, my mom came in the room because I was banging on a door. And when she
Hmm.
came in, I was basically like jumping and hitting the door, like slamming my body against the door and then bouncing off.
You may have been dreaming you were trapped somewhere and trying to escape.
No, she asked me what I was up to, and I told her I was playing basketball.
Okay.
And then she realized I wasn't awake. I was sleepwalking or
Okay.
basketball playing.
Makes you wonder how many sports you can play while sleepwalking.
And she said, "Well, here's the thing: I can't play any sports in my waking life." So, um, what she said was, "It's not time to play basketball. It's time to go to bed." And I was like, "Oh, all right." And I just went back to bed.
Imagine,
Um,
can you imagine playing sleep hockey? Getting
yeah, that
outside with the
yeah.
stick and the puck and the neighbor's window.
But I mean, that's the thing is like I didn't have like one of those tiny basketball hoops in my room that you stick on the wall with suction cups. I
Yeah.
didn't play basketball. I had no interest in basketball. I don't know where the hell that comes from. But for whatever reason, in my sleep, I was playing basketball when I was like
Weird.
5, and my mom came in and made me go to bed. You know, so weird things like that.
Well,
And then in my adult life, I used to smoke in my sleep,
that's
which was
dangerous.
bad. It's very dangerous. I didn't believe that I was doing it. I was told that I smoked in my sleep, and I thought the girl I was dating at the time was full of shit. But she was mad at me for smoking in her room. And I
Understandable.
didn't believe her until one day when I woke up with a small fire going on in my chest. Um,
Yeah, I mainly vape these days, but I've never done either in my sleep.
yeah. So, I mean, it's thankfully, I don't really do much of either anymore. Like, I feel like it was a handful of isolated incidents that where that kind of thing happened. But
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I mean, um, one of the earliest dreams I can remember is of seeing a landed flying saucer um,
Hmm.
behind like a barn, and I got this eerie feeling that I wasn't supposed to be there.
Hmm.
So I kind of turned to run away, and I ran right into this guy that like looked like a classic G-man with like one of those beige raincoats and like a fedora and a tie and a white shirt, um, and and sunglasses, and he just like grabbed me, and I woke up. Um, it freaked me out, but that's one of the earliest dreams I can remember. And that guy kept coming back in varying forms, um,
Yeah.
and it became like a recurring character in my nightmares as a small child
Hmm.
until I miraculously had a moment of lucid dreaming and got rid of him. So that was
Do you think
kind
he
of wild.
was external or perhaps just a mental character, just a mental creation?
Yeah, I don't know what the hell he was, but he does have like those MIB qualities.
Hmm.
And the fact that he first appeared when the flying saucer was in the dream seems significant. Uh,
Yes.
he eventually developed like a whole gang of weird characters, like
Yeah, you
that.
told me about this in our first interview years ago.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, had you seen anything? Had you been exposed to any Men in Black in
No.
related imagery in the media or anything? Okay, obviously not at that age.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, like, the flying saucer is a classic flying saucer. So I think,
Yes.
I I would have seen, I loved watching old 50s B movies and stuff like that. So I would have seen things like, um, Earth versus flying saucers, even if I wasn't paying like crazy amount of attention to it, or like old Twilight Zone episodes.
Yeah.
So it could just be like a composite thing from that. But yeah, yeah. But oh yeah, that's a bummer that I talked about that before. I can't even remember what I talk about anymore. But that it would have been, I don't know, 4 years ago or something. So
Yeah.
so yeah. Um but if anybody in your listeners wants to hear me repeat myself more, they can always go check out my show. I do that a lot there.
Indeed. What's your show called again?
It's called the AP Strange Show. I
All right,
figured
and
I'd
what
make it real easy for people to find me. You know,
what platforms is it available on?
all of them. I think I've got all of them at this point. It was funny launching a podcast because then
Yeah.
people were like, I can't find it on Spotify. And then I'd go to my provider and be like, okay, let's see, click a few buttons. I'm like, boom, it's on Spotify. I'm like, now it's on everything. And then somebody
Yeah.
was like, I can't find it on Amazon podcasts. I'm like, is that a thing?
Hmm.
Okay, let me go check. And I'd have to. So yeah,
Now,
it's on all the things, I'm pretty
all
sure
right.
at this point,
And how many
including YouTube.
episodes? How many episodes
Uh,
have you done?
yeah, I've done it for a year now. So
Mhm.
there's a little less than 60 at this point. So,
All right,
um,
so plenty for my listeners, now your listeners as well to sift through.
yep, yep.
Uh,
And you can check out my writings at apstrange.com as well.
All right.
Because if you want more about like the whole credibility stuff that I was talking about, I have a pretty in-depth post on there
Mhm.
um, about that and um plenty of other stuff besides, like all kinds of wacky stuff that I cover on the blog.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to say as a send off?
Um, well, I guess as the fire dwindles down in the fireplace here,
Yep.
uh, I can say to your listeners, sweet dreams, enjoy, go to
All right.
sleep, and you know, don't let the vampires bite.
Yeah. And that has been our show. I'd like to thank our guest, AP Strange, and I'd like to thank in advance anyone who listens. Good night.